The sun had barely risen over the dusty tarmac when the first drops of sweat trickled down Elijah's forehead. The morning heat in Alabama didn't waste time, and neither did he. Dressed in a faded navy jumpsuit with his name stitched above, the Hart Elijah crouched beneath the belly of the grounded FJ-22 test jet, a stubborn bolt refusing to turn. His hands were calloused, blackened with grease, and steady like a surgeon's. He didn't rush. He didn't speak much either. He let the work speak for itself. Then came him, Ryan Maddox. White dress shirt, sleeves rolled, Oakley sunglasses hanging from his collar, and an attitude sharp enough to slice through steel. He worked in aerospace design, the kind of guy who printed specs from an office 200 miles away, and thought that gave him more authority than a man who'd spent 15 years inside engine bays. Elijah, right? Ryan had smirked that morning, stepping out of his rented Tesla like he owned the hangar. They told me you'd be the one working on the test unit. Didn't realize we were still hiring classic methods. His eyes flicked to Elijah's hands, the grease under his fingernails. Hope you know this engine isn't from a pickup truck. Elijah said nothing, just stood, wiped his hands with an old rag, and nodded once. Calm, almost too calm. He'd heard it before. He'd heard it all. The snide remarks, the subtle digs masked as jokes, the way people doubted him not because of his skill but because of the skin he wore. Black, proud, and skilled far beyond what most were willing to acknowledge. Ryan didn't come alone. A camera crew trailed him, part of a new docuseries highlighting young engineering minds transforming aviation. Elijah wasn't the star. He wasn't even invited to be in the frame. He was just there to make the engine camera ready. You mind if we speed this up? Ryan called out again, checking his Rolex. We go live in an hour and I'd like a clean ignition sequence. None of that manual priming nonsense. Elijah's jaw tightened, not from anger. He'd long moved past the point of letting men like Ryan rattle him. But there was something in the way Ryan dismissed the very work that kept that machine from falling out of the sky. It wasn't the first time someone doubted him, but it still struck the same nerve it always had. Nearby, a young girl, Maya, sat, cross-legged on an old crate. 11 years old, full of curiosity, and the daughter of one of the custodians at the airfield. She watched Elijah like he was a magician. To her, he was more than a mechanic. He was a builder of birds, a man who brought thunder to the sky. She'd never missed a morning when Elijah was working, and he'd taken a liking to her quiet wonder. You gonna show him, Mr. Elijah? She whispered when Ryan turned away, still mic'd up and throwing jargon to the cameraman. Elijah gave her a side glance and half a grin. I always do. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't about proving anything. But there are moments, quiet, small moments, when dignity demands a reply. And Elijah wasn't about to let this one pass. Back, near the hangar doors, the tech team gathered around monitors and checklists. Ryan barked instructions, using buzzwords that didn't match the machine in front of him. He didn't notice Elijah double-checking the turbine alignment manually, twice. He didn't know about the modified oil injector Elijah installed last week after a test burn had nearly backfired. He didn't ask, because he didn't care. To him, Elijah was just the help. All right, we're good to go, Ryan announced loudly, stepping in front of the camera with the confidence of a TED Talk speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to witness the first live start of the FJ-22 test unit, rebuilt and ready for ignition. The crew counted down. Elijah stood off to the side, a shadow in his own workplace. Ryan slid into the cockpit seat for drama, like a pilot. The ignition sequence began. At first, silence. Then a low whir. Ryan's smile faltered slightly as the engine hesitated, choked, then, boom. Not a violent boom. Not a dangerous one. A living boom. A deep, roaring breath as the jet engine surged to life, the turbine spinning with flawless precision, the exhaust humming like a song forged in steel and sky. A vibration rippled through the tarmac. It wasn't loud just in sound, it was loud in truth. Something this perfect couldn't have been slapped together in a lab. This was work done by someone who knew, who understood not just how the parts fit but how they talked to each other. The crew looked stunned, The camera didn't blink, and Ryan couldn't say anything at all. The engine growled behind him like a beast awakened, and he sat there frozen. No triumphant words, no witty closer. Just the sound of everything he didn't understand vibrating through his spine. Elijah stood still, arms crossed, not looking for applause. Maya clapped once, then twice, then everyone else followed. And Ryan, he climbed out of the cockpit, slower this time, his eyes scanning the machine like it had just insulted him. Who configured the injector timing? He finally asked, voice tight. Elijah tilted his head. I did. Ryan nodded slowly, swallowing pride like a bad cough. Right, well, that was solid work. Elijah didn't answer, because sometimes silence says more than any speech ever could. And just when you think the engine's done speaking, it roars again. But what happened after that ignition? Why did Ryan come back that night, long after the cameras were gone? And what secret did Elijah reveal about that jet? Something no one, not even the engineers at headquarters, ever knew. That's where this story really begins. The sound of the jet engine still echoed in the hangar walls when Ryan slipped away, quiet this time. He didn't say much. Didn't need to. Everyone had seen what happened. The man who thought he knew it all was brought to silence by a machine, tuned by the very hands he'd mocked. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Later that evening, the hangar was empty except for Elijah, standing alone beside the test jet. The engine had cooled, but the questions hadn't. Something in the way Ryan looked back before leaving, half curiosity, half something heavier, stuck with him. Elijah had seen that look before. The one that comes after ego gets bruised by truth. Maya had gone home. The lights were dim. Crickets echoed outside. Elijah wiped a smudge off the wing and stared at the engine like it could talk back. And then, just before midnight, headlights swept across the hangar floor. The Tesla again. Ryan stepped out, alone this time. No camera crew, no swagger, just a laptop bag and an uncertain face. I ran the diagnostics on your injector mod, Ryan said, stepping slowly into the light. There's no documentation, no CAD, no spec sheets. Elijah didn't flinch. That's 'cause it wasn't built on a screen. Ryan set his laptop down on a rolling bench. You increased thrust response by almost 18%. I don't even know how you managed that without changing the compressor stages. Elijah didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked around the plane and leaned against a tool cart, watching Ryan fidget with a torque wrench he didn't need. You ever worked without a manual? Elijah asked finally. Ever felt a machine with your hands? Heard it speak when it's not right? Ryan hesitated. I studied at MIT. I work with data, sensors, algorithms. That's what I thought. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was heavy. Something unspoken hanging between two men from two different worlds. One built his knowledge on instinct and time, the other on diagrams and theory, but deep down, both loved machines. That was the one thing they shared. I used to think this field had space for all kinds of minds, Ryan said, voice lower now. But I see now, some of us, we just talk louder. Doesn't mean we're saying more. Elijah raised an eyebrow, surprised at the humility sneaking into the conversation. There's a bigger issue, Ryan continued. The company wants to fast-track this design into production. They don't even know about your fix. If they roll out the old spec, it's going to fail the high-altitude ignition test. Elijah straightened. Then tell them. I can't, Ryan said. Not without your permission. Not unless you get listed as a co-developer, which might ruffle some feathers upstairs. Elijah chuckled dryly. Now you care about ruffling feathers? It's not just about you or me, Ryan said. It's about getting the engine right. You fixed something I couldn't even detect on a sim. That's when Elijah turned and walked to his old metal locker. He pulled out a thick, grease-stained notebook and dropped it on the bench with a loud thunk. Pages of hand-sketched diagrams, formulas scribbled in the margins, and ideas tested over years. Not a single blueprint from a computer, just raw, learned experience. This is how I build, Elijah said. If they want it, they take it all. And my name goes with it. I'm done being the ghost under the hood. Ryan nodded. He wasn't the same man who showed up that morning, but while the two of them talked mechanics and politics, something bigger was moving behind the scenes. Unbeknownst to both, a low-level employee from the camera crew, Jason, had been live-streaming parts of the morning test run. He thought he was just capturing behind-the-scenes content for the docu-series, but when the jet engine roared and Ryan froze on camera, the internet caught fire. People rewound, slowed it down, zoomed in, and there was Elijah. No name tag visible. No mention in the captions, but the internet has a way of finding the truth. By morning, a clip titled, "Who Really Fixed the Jet Engine?" was trending. Comment sections blew up. Who's the black guy in the background? Wait, this dude just got shown up live. Give that mechanic his flowers. And just like that, the quiet man who preferred to stay in the shadows found himself at the center of a storm. Meanwhile, upstairs in the company boardroom, executives scrambled. Their showboating prodigy had been made a fool. The jet engine was perfect, yes, but not for the reasons they could explain. Now they had a choice to make. Acknowledge Elijah's work or pretend it never happened and risk burying the most effective innovation in their program. But Elijah wasn't just sitting back. He knew how these stories usually went. A moment of credit, then silence. So he made a choice too. He didn't wait for permission. He went public. With Maya filming from his garage, he uploaded his own breakdown of the injector modification. No high production value, just him, a whiteboard, and the engine parts. But his voice was steady, honest. And for the first time, the world heard not just the engine, but the man who made it roar. The video exploded. And Ryan? Well, Ryan was watching it, sitting in his apartment with a phone full of missed calls and a meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. with the board. What happened in that meeting would change everything. But before the board could vote on Elijah's involvement, a test pilot went off script. 1 hour before the final demo, he manually engaged the engine, using Elijah's settings. But something unexpected happened. The engine roared again. But this time it talked back, not in words, in flame, in thrust, in power beyond what any of them predicted. The jet didn't just lift. It hovered. The design, Elijah's design, had unlocked something no one anticipated. Now everyone wanted a piece of it. But Elijah wasn't interested in selling it. He had something else in mind, something bigger, and what he said in that boardroom stunned every person in the room, including Ryan. But that's a story for the next chapter. The boardroom was quiet, too quiet for a room full of executives. Phones buzzed on silent, eyes darted between one another. At the head of the long glass table sat Mr. Coleman, CEO of the aerospace firm, gripping his pen like it might snap. Ryan stood beside him, straight-backed but sweating, and then there was Elijah, hands clasped in front of him, shoulders relaxed, calm like a man who'd seen storms before and had learned not to flinch. "Mr. Elijah Brooks," Coleman finally said, voice flat, "we understand the engine's success is largely due to your unauthorized modification." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's a bad thing." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Ryan stared down at his notepad. Coleman cleared his throat. "We're prepared to offer a one-time compensation package. Substantial. You sign over the design rights, we handle the rest." Elijah shook his head slowly. "That engine isn't just parts and pressure. It's my name, my time, and my story. You want the fix? You take the man who made it. Full credit. Permanent seat on the engineering team. And Maya, she gets a scholarship to the flight academy when she turns 16. A few executives whispered to each other. Coleman looked surprised. "The girl from the hangar?" "She saw the whole thing," Elijah said. "And she believed in me before your fancy cameras ever showed up. She's got a mind that thinks in machines. We're not leaving her behind." Ryan looked up. That was the moment something shifted. In him. This wasn't just about pride anymore, it was legacy. Coleman leaned back. "That's unorthodox," Elijah smiled. "So's flight." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Ryan spoke, his voice clearer than it had been in days. He's right. Without Elijah's design, this project doesn't go forward. And if we're the company that turned our back on the best mind in that hangar, we don't deserve to. Put another plane in the sky. The room went still again. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, Coleman nodded. Deal. And just like that, everything changed. The engine wasn't just a prototype anymore. It became the centerpiece of the new program, and Elijah's name was printed right on the side of the first working model, FJ-22 Brooks Edition. Ryan and Elijah worked side by side now, not as rivals, but as a team. Their dynamic shifted, from tension to trust. Ryan stopped assuming, started listening, and Elijah, he began sharing more, teaching, mentoring. Not just Maya, but others like her. Quiet kids, overlooked talent. The ones who knew how to listen to machines the way some folks listen to jazz. And Maya? She became a local icon after Elijah's video went viral. Her curiosity never faded. She asked 1,000 questions and Elijah answered every one. She even started sketching her own engine ideas on napkins and scrap cardboard. The scholarship was just the beginning. She had a spark, and this time, someone made sure it didn't burn out. As for the internet, it didn't forget. The story of the black mechanic who fixed the jet became a symbol of second chances, of unspoken brilliance, of what happens when talent is seen and respected. Schools started using Elijah's injector video in STEM classes. Engineering forums debated his mods. Pilots requested the Brooks injector by name. But more important than all of that, Elijah finally got to walk into that hangar without being invisible. He was no longer the man in the background. He was the architect of flight, the man who heard what the machine needed when no one else could. The story didn't end in a roar of an engine. It ended in the quiet hum of respect finally earned, bridges built, and a door left wide open for the next Maya waiting to be seen. So the next time you hear an engine come to life, think about the hands that tuned it. Think about the names we almost never learn. And remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest legacy. That was Elijah Brooks, and this was his story.